drug use, prostitution, all these things that are anti-self, anti-human persist when you don't know who you are, right? When you know that you come from the first people on planet Earth and you set the standard for what it is to be civil, then you're going to walk around Earth a little bit different.
Option forward. I'm your boy. I'm your boy Drew. I'm always joined by the second half of the show. GQ Nesto, how you doing today?
What it do? What it do?
How you feeling?
Oh, you already know.
It's been an exciting weekend so far.
Definitely exciting. It's been definitely an experience, to say the least.
Okay, an experience. Why an experience? You do
We'll-
something
we'll-
special?
We'll get down to that.
We'll get down to that a little
We'll
bit
get
later.
to, yeah. That will be another time.
All right, and ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by a very, very special guest today. I would say he represents a source of information for those who are willing to put in the work. It's my opinion that in order to identify properly the origins of anything, all right, examination must be more than just surface level. You know what I'm saying? It's more than just a headline. Most of us get educated off of a headline. They put it out there, the tagline, and we think we're like subject matter experts off of that thing, right? But you got to read into the article, you got to read into the books and study deep. But I'll just jump right to it. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Assistant Professor of Pan-African Studies at California State University, Sacramento, Dr. Clarence George III. How you doing today, sir?
Man, it's a blessing. Thank you for inviting me to be in on y'all space, on y'all platform. It's a beautiful day. I look forward to this experience, and I'm just excited to be here and share this information with the world. So I'm excited.
So, Dr. Clarence, tell the listeners and the viewers a little bit about yourself. Where you grew up? You from Stockton, right?
I'm from Stockton, California.
209.
209, Mudville, Cowtown, all kind of epithets that the great city of mine has taken on. Born and raised in Stockton, 1983. South Stockton, East Stockton, West Stockton. Family, my mom and dad first moved us out to Lewis Park, West Stockton. Very diverse neighborhood, a lot of different friends, different ethnic groups, right? I remember spending the night at my Cambodian friend's house, learning how to eat noodles with eggs in them, and just exploring different cuisines, different cultures, different worldviews through my neighborhood in Stockton and the neighborhoods that I grew up in. So Stockton was definitely a great place to learn, a great place to see the diversity of the world, the multiculturalism of the world. And Stockton is near and dear to my heart in many respects. And also it's a space that has also caused dear pain for me. So it's kind of a weird polarity. It being, my hometown, also being the place where, my little brother was murdered. Things like that happened in that space, right? So I would even dare say that the murder of my little brother was really the true caveat that really pushed me down the path wholeheartedly in wanting to know. Education was the byproduct, or the PhD was the byproduct on the kind of the covenant I had with the creator, with whoever is that omniscient power that exists beyond time, place, and space. And I guess my request or my statement was, all right, so, the greatest thing that the greatest tragedy for me was to lose my little brother, right? You being the protector, that's your job, right? So losing that kind of left me at a point where I thought life was it was surreal. Like, what am I living for at this point? Like, My mom had lost. That was her second child at that time. My parents were divorced. Just a lot of challenges in regards to me trying to figure out what is life. So circling back, I come back and when my brother passed away, I just asked this question. I just truly want to know stuff. I want to know the truth. And I was wholeheartedly bent on wanting to know the truth on stuff and being perfectly satisfied if that brought me back to the church in the pulpit, or if it brought me to Islam, or if it brought me to Judaism, or if it brought me to Buddhism, if it brought me to any quote unquote religion, that was fine. On that journey, I was able to understand the difference between religion and spirituality, the difference between dogma and the difference between spiritual growth and consciousness. One of the things that kind of put me on that path of spirituality and really trying to understand how the cosmos work and how spirit works was I had a cousin who was a seer, for lack of a better word, could interact with spiritual beings as they crossed over through the other realm, death, for lack of a better word. And this cousin told me something that was very profound. She told me one day, she was like, "Hey, Nunu, your brother told me that he's been trying to contact your dad. He's been touching the water in the fish tank and trying to get your dad's attention." Now, this is very significant because at that time, this cousin had never been to our house. So one, she wouldn't have known about that fish tank. Two, she wouldn't have known where the fish tank was placed at. And three, she wouldn't have known where my dad kept his keys at to leave for work, because only people in the family knew. You understand? Yeah, right? So it's something that only how, like, when I go home, there's a certain place that I keep my keys at, right? Only if you live with me, only if it's an intimate space, you would know where I keep my keys, right? My dad always kept his keys on the, we had that little bar back in the day where you have your sink and it has like an extended bar and you have your little stool. So we had that, and the fish tank was to the right by a window, and my dad the fish tank would be to the right of him as he would pick his keys and head straight out the door. So she was telling me that my little brother was trying to flick the water to get his attention, which I totally overlooked that statement, and I was just mad because I was like, well, why he didn't come to my dreams? Why he didn't come tell me? Not knowing that I wasn't conscious enough, right? That I wasn't spiritually equipped enough to deal with that experience. So I then had to go and equip myself spiritually, mentally, educationally, through experiences to be equipped enough to engage with the spiritual realm. So that was a process that first kind of initiated these steps and where I'm in today. But I always was, for lack of a better word, for I guess a photographic memory. In elementary school, learning about all the historical figures. Obviously, they would highlight the white historical figures and never including people of color, which was very problematic for me. And I knew that this education wasn't true because it had so many gaps in it. I went to school at Stockton, California, went to high school at Franklin, California, and could tell you more graduating from Franklin about the czars of Russia than I could about West African culture or African American history. That's problematic, right? So those kind of features and experiences through education encouraged me to look up who am I? Where do I come from? Who are my people? What's our story? So that, and coupled with the death of my brother and coupled with the anger of why do black people kill each other? What's the condition of the crabs in the bucket? What's the conditions of young brothers getting guns and going into their own neighborhoods and cutting down kids that look like them? Whereas you have, different police agencies and different agencies that come in and undermine the community that don't look like them, and they don't say boo to their face. Or, for example, George Zimmerman, for example, right, who shot Trayvon Martin, a young boy, young baby, is walking around unscathed, and I'm pretty sure he sees black people when he walks around Earth. So I was curious to what's the condition for black people to quickly kill each other, quickly hurt each other, and yet the oppressor or the people who have benefited from the oppression of you, you don't say boo to, right? We can go throughout history through this experience. Emmett Till, right? A baby. Grown men come to his house, right? And take him from his family.
So I know you mentioned the word, being a protector, and obviously that tragedy triggering a different path that you would probably imagine prior to that incident that you lost your brother. So what would you say to him now, with all the knowledge that you acquired, and obviously being a black man in this country? Like, what are something that you would be so juiced to tell him, like, man, this is how we gotta move, because this is where it got me, especially all the accomplishments that you've had, all the education, the effort that you've been through, because I'm pretty sure it wasn't a walk in the park, especially coming from Stockton, so I'm familiar with the area, so I know how it is, and only a few have the luxury of getting out, and actually looking back and being able to tell the story. So what is it that you would say to him at this current moment?
So it's interesting that you say that. The whole goal of my spiritual development and educational work was to get access back to them. So in essence, I've had this conversation with him. So I guess without going into too much detail, like, through just my development in spirituality and being able to travel the world and talk to different healers and tap into different energies and different spaces, you feel me? You realize that the realm of the dead is a realm that exists, right? So it's a realm just how physical matter exists, right? They're in a transition, going from matter, making a transition to which they see fit. Without going into much detail, right? The soul has options, whether it reincarnates, whether it sits in the ethereal realm, or another dimension. The soul has options. So I guess the first thing that I was made aware of, that death isn't the end all be all. It is another extension of an experience. So being equipped with that information and that knowledge, then it was a matter of developing the skill set to tap in to communicate with that realm. It's a number of ways you could go about tapping into your ancestors, setting up your altars, prayer. Different cultures have different.
Do some voodoo or something, like type of thing. Is that what you're saying, or like what type of
what type of is indigenous quantum physics.
Okay.
So everything that you see that's happening in any major scientific lab, people of African descent, African people, indigenous people were doing that in the bush. There's many books written on it. Matter of fact, there's a book called Voodoo Quantum Physics written by a Jamaican doctor who talks about the spiritual realm and the experiences of shamanship. There is Baba Patrice Melodoma Somé, who has since made the transition, who speaks on the importance of ritual. His book of Water and Spirit is a really good book. The becoming aware of the spiritual realm, not as you put it, voodoo, but more as a scientist, because that's what it is. It's science. It's science at its highest level because you are merging the spiritual realm with the scientific order. So that's where folks, get misconstrued on African mystery systems. They are simply spirituality coupled with science.
So do you think, in your opinion, that's something that would help with grief and being able to cope with that, and in a sense keep them together,
Yes.
keep their
Yes.
their memory
Yes.
or spirits alive
Yes.
within you?
Yes.
Wow.
It would do a tremendous amount of healing if people could tap into their higher consciousness. But that comes with, that's a lifelong journey and endeavor, right? Because that's a conscious decision to engage in the path of my eye. That's a conscious decision to engage in the light. It's a very conscious decision, and it comes with rules, regulations, and do's and don'ts, right? This bestowment of light and of information comes with tremendous responsibility. This is why you don't see me on YouTube or my space is a sacred space, and I do my work in the sacred space of the community of scholars that come to see me for a purpose. And I engage in the sacred talks with like-minded folks who are also on the path and on the journey that engage in making sure that humankind is still invested in light and knowledge.
What would you say as far as and I know this is I've done a little research, and obviously the education system the way we have it, but what would be your take on social emotional learning?
I think it's good. I strictly operate from what we refer to as the African-centered pedagogy, which is a very multicultural approach that centers folks' perspective on their experiences, and that incorporates their emotional, their social, their class, their gender. It incorporates everything that person is, their sexuality, everything that person is becomes the center of how they give analysis and how they see the world. So my approach, the African-centered approach, actually is a essential multicultural approach because it gives everybody the opportunity to see the world from their cultural experience, which tends to give folks agency and pride no matter what the subject matter is, because they can then go and pull from the curriculum and tie it into their lived experience. So that's the other benefit of the African-centered way, is because it leans towards pulling in scholars' experiences from outside the classroom, giving them the posture not only being student, but being expert, right? Because they have a lived experience that brings material and energy and a perspective to the classroom. And any great scholar, any great coach would be foolish not to tap into that opportunity with all these new minds, these fresh experiences. So I use, again, that sacred space as a space of reciprocity to coach them up, to build them up, to give them information that will make them competitive in this time, place, and space, but also to receive information so I can stay current and relevant and applicable to how I develop content for my classrooms and my courses and my research and my speeches and my talks and books that I'm writing to make sure that it's plugged in, to make sure that it's doing its effect for all levels of folks in society.
In preparation for today, I think you recommended the video, one of the YouTube videos for John Henry Clark.
A Great and Mighty Walk. It's the first video I show in all my classes, no matter what I teach.
Yeah, it was deep, but it's one thing that stood out to me was the entirety of the video. He spoke on the importance of knowing your history because black is a color, it's not an origin.
It's not.
Right. And do you agree? Like, I think what I summed up from it was like not knowing your history, you affect it cripples your past, your present, and your future.
It's dangerous. It's dangerous.
What are your thoughts on it?
So I have, my class is built on that premise, right? One of the first things I asked in my class is who benefits from the omission of history? People are quick to raise their hand. Oh, white people. And I'm saying, oh, time out now. I ain't never seen white land on the map. So you're going to have to reorganize that comment, right? And as you just mentioned, black people, there's no such thing as black land. Well, technically there is. There is a black land. It's called Kemet. And it's actually named the black land for black people, but that's another story. We'll circle back and get there. Dr. Clark reminds us that history to a people is similar to a relationship between a mother and child, right? Essentially, think of a childless mother. That child ain't gonna survive. You understand what I'm saying? So that is essential to history to a people. When people aren't, particularly black people, people of African descent, aren't aware of their history, then we lead to what Dr. Wade Nobles calls or addresses as psychological derailment. And Dr. Naeem Akbar, Dr. Linda James Myers all talk about the impact of the derailment of the African mind and what it has led to, right? When we talk about the self-alienation syndrome, self-hate syndrome, we see, all the things that we see that visit and hinder a healthy community, drug use, prostitution, all these things that are anti-self, anti-human persist when you don't know who you are, right? When you know that you come from the first people on planet Earth and you set the standard for what it is to be civil, then you're going to walk around Earth a little bit different. When you know that you come from the first mathematics, from the first folks that looked at the stars, who mapped out the universe, who migrated around the planet, who sailed the oceans, that hit different. When you get to go to the land of Africa, or if you ever get a chance to go to the land of Kemet, now known as Egypt, and you see the Great Sphinx, who is over 10,000 years old, and you see the face of that Ethiopian woman that looks like your grandma, you then have a different power. When you see the great pyramids of Giza built on massive stone, you understand the massive power of who you are. When you get to go to Nubia and go to the island of Elephantine and see the red granite that was specifically taken from Nubia to go build in Cairo. When you understand that the Egyptians come from the south, that they come from the land where goddess Hapi dwell, right? When they come from Uganda, Kenya. Only when you go to Egypt and you see the hieroglyphics and you see the Meta Neter, which is the God speech and divine word, these symbols that you see are only found in Inner Africa. Huh? They're only found in Inner Africa. Giraffes, hippos, leopards, lions, baboons, crocodiles, the ibis bird, the ostrich feather. The ostrich feather is the key to all of Egyptian cosmology because it represents the goddess Ma'at. So the ostrich feather, you got to get to Kenya before you get to an ostrich, brother. So the symbols of Egypt represent or come from Inner Africa, right? Knowing your history turns on that pride, turns on that legacy of knowledge itself. This is why our education is so effective on the disenfranchisement of people of color, because it's a Eurocentric education system, which only highlights the accomplishments and the perspectives of Europe, which is a misnomer and a farce for education, which leads to the marginalization of people of color, right? Because they don't see themselves in education. If I don't see myself in education, why the fuck would I invest in it? If I don't see myself in the books and the foundations on the pillars of civilization, why would I invest in it? This education system is so cold. They'll tell you about Christopher Columbus, but won't tell you in his diary, Columbus seen Africans going back to Africa when he was in the Caribbean islands, because Columbus never, ever technically set foot on North American land. He only made it to the Caribbean islands. But they don't tell you that in history class, huh? They don't tell you that Columbus collected spears from the indigenous natives from those islands who had traded with black West Africans who had came multiple times to trade, right? Columbus takes these spears back to Spain, have them tested for the metal composition, West African gold, West African copper, West African silver. So before 1492, they already knew that Africans had set foot in the New World. If you even want to go deeper than that, there's a king by the name of Mansa Musa, who is said to be the richest king on earth. Still to this day, if you put Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos' money together, they still would come short of what Mansa Musa's net worth would be. Before Mansa Musa, there was a king before him. His name was Abu Bakr II. He took 1,000 ships and sailed to the Americas, never to be seen again. That was the first voyage. It was a voyage that he had sent prior to the Americas. One ship came back. The captain told him what had happened. So he doubled down with 1,000 more ships and hit the high seas. They've done experiments with reed boats from the Mediterranean to see that current, and from West Africa to see if that current is true. And the current has been found to be very, very true.
What do you think? Why is it, and it's funny because I was actually reading that on my way over here, how, there's, the motherland's the motherland. You can't really deny that, right?
I mean, you can look up the work, not to cut you off, you can look up the work of Dr. Louis Leakey, because that work, Dr. Louis Leakey, literally compiles the evolution of home.
Well, there was a lot of continents all together. I mean, it was all in one, but obviously, like I said, all this information is, like you said, the education system is cold. So a lot of this information is not really out there, right? So now we can have our conspiracies about it, or we can have our actual facts. So can you shed the light on why do you think all that is kind of like, kind of pushed under the mat?
Well, I mean, for lack of a better word, white supremacy, right? It's a culture war. White supremacy, I guess, for lack of a better word. When I say white supremacy, I don't mean like white people hating other people. I mean, it's a power dynamic for information. And the information that is perpetuated in K-12 schools constantly marginalizes people of color. That marginalization leads to psychological implications for how they move, how they perceive themselves in education, how they perceive themselves to get jobs, how they perceive themselves in society, right? So a multicultural education pushes back on this idea of white supremacy, pushes back on this idea that Europe and the concepts coming out of Europe are universal to all mankind. That's the problem, and that's the modus operandi of a multicultural education, is to show the fallacies and the flaws of this idea of Europe being the standard for human experiences, especially when they're one of the youngest cultures to hit the stage of humanity.
Okay, that's funny. All right, so that we're going to circle back then. So you mentioned civilization, right? The First Man, a book you also referred to me. We'll bring that up a little bit later, but it spoke about Upper Egypt, Upper Africa and Lower Africa, right? The Upper Africa being Ethiopia, right? Is where they have found some of the earliest human existence being in that region of Africa, right?
That'd
But
be in the Omo Valley. The Omo Valley, that's more around Kenya, Uganda, around the Great Lakes region. That's where you find the earliest bones, Australopithecus, Homo sapien, Homo erectus. So basically you're finding the evolution of the human body as it's evolving from hibernate being to full Homo sapiens sapien to which we are today.
okay, and then you relate that, you fast forward and you look at the way Hollywood media has portrayed Egypt as a kind of like you say, like a Euro Egypt, right? So, and there's been a lot of discussion on, I know the truth, but I know Cleopatra probably didn't look like Elizabeth Taylor.
She probably did not.
She probably didn't.
She probably did not.
She probably didn't look. So what?
What does any other mixed race person look like when they have a black father or a black mother and a Latino father or a Latino mother or a Greek mother or Greek? They pretty much look like us, right? Yeah.
There's a little light skin, right?
Right. So my dad. So let's get back to this. When you talk about Cleopatra, right? Which one, right? Because there's more than one, and particularly most likely they talk about Cleopatra the 14th, which is cool. But you got to understand, to become pharaoh in Egypt, you still had to go through the royal house of the queens, right? So even to be pharaoh, you still have to marry into the royal families, into the royal nobility of Kemet. So even so so when you talk about, I guess, the invasions or the conquering of Egypt, right? The first ones being the Persians, and then actually the Hyksos, but that's another conversation. The Persians were occupying Kemet at the time during 330 BC. This is during the time during Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great is pushing east. I believe in Babylon or India, somewhere around there. He was poisoned, or they say he died, but he was poisoned. So when Alexander the Great was poisoned, all the kingdoms that he had conquered, they were given to his top generals. So the general who got Egypt was Ptolemy. So he didn't have to fight for Egypt, right? The Greeks had already vacated the Persians through their conquest of getting King Darius. So Alexander essentially had quelled the Persian occupation of Egypt through the defeating of the Persian Empire, right? And he inherited all their lands. So this is when you start to get the great number of mixing of races in Egypt with the coming of Greeks. But at the same time, note that they did not engage in destroying the Egyptian culture. They adopted it, right? They adopted it. Usually when people go to a foreign land as conquerors, as colonizers, they bring their culture and push their culture on the group that they conquered, correct? So this never happened in Egypt. Every time somebody came to that land, they came for knowledge, they came for information, they came to the fountain of wisdom, right? Think about every great nation on planet Earth today: the United States, France, Germany, Britain, Italy. All of them have been to Egypt. There's a book by Corey Fagan called The Rape of the Nile. Shows you step by step, right? Even the current population there, they recognize that they aren't the indigenous folks of the land. They know they came in around 600 AD, right, with that population. And they were being pushed east from the Mongols that were coming from the steppes of Mongolia, who were pushing the Khans. Not the Khans, but the Caliphate, the Islam and Muslim Brotherhood. They were pushing them west, right? So all these things are connected. It's a globe that's happening simultaneously, that's having cause and effect from the Pacific Ocean and the the peninsula of Korea all the way to the Pillars of Hercules and the Mediterranean. You understand what I'm saying? So one of the things that I think the Eurocentric education does, it isolates history. It isolates moments in history that are essential to be connected. Right? It takes away that holistic approach that we so crave in an indigenous consciousness, right? The holistic approach. So that's, and then you got to also go look who sits on the boards of curriculum for education. Guarantee they don't look like me and you. You understand? So that's a parent issue. That's an issue for parents to get involved in their school boards, particularly Black and brown parents, because the things that y'all complain about, it's up to you all to go put the pressure on the superintendent, on the school board to change and have representation in those curriculums.
So what are 5 things that you think will change the education system to a more progressive state, especially, with AI being incorporated? And
when you
all
say
these
education system, what do you mean? College?
I would say if we had to restart it, especially because after, all the scandals I've been going through regarding, testings and all that, I mean, obviously it needs a reset button, in my opinion, right? So if there was 5 values or 5 elements that you could incorporate to restart it, with obviously incorporating AI, because obviously that's the new world, what would it be?
So for me, AI don't really bother me because I set up my exams to where I want to hear the voice of my students, and you could use AI, but I'll sniff it out. So right now, AI is not like really a significant challenge or feature for me. So one, going back to what you said, yeah, the whole educational system needs to overhaul, period. Point blank, period, right? Okay, so if you do, theoretically, if you do that, where do you start off, right? Like how you can't, like, you would have to implement it from K with a kindergartner class and just work those kindergartner all the way up to the 12th grade, right?
Right.
So they'd have essentially that new model of education. Then the question would be, what do you do with the students who didn't get that model of education, right? How do they get prepared? So I guess pulling back, first and foremost, you got to have a culturally relevant education. That's the first principle. A culturally relevant education. Culturally relevant education gives the opportunity of bringing everybody from the margins. So it has nobody in a marginal space. Everybody becomes centered in the educational process. So that's first things first. Inclusion, right? Multicultural inclusion. Everybody's important. Everybody's story needs to be told. Everybody has contributed to what we see today as the planet Earth, right? Nothing was done in isolation. Every culture has assisted, has shared, has given information to each other. To think that we do these things in vacuums, that's just silly. So another principle would be just sharing. Community, right? Some of the things, so multiculturalism, community, sharing, agency, and dare I say fun? I feel like, fun. I'll put fun with autonomy. One of the things that I find that's really challenging in my class when I get first years, seniors that are graduating, I give real rigid structure in my class, but I give a lot of autonomy. And what I mean by that is my 16 weeks of my syllabus are hammered out. But when I ask you to turn in an assignment, you can pick between week 1 and week 16 on what assignment you want to do. So you have an option to say, oh, you know what? This really looks interesting to me. This speaks to me. I want to write on that. That's fine. If you don't pick it, I'll cover it in class via a lecture, or somebody else will cover it because they're going to do a presentation. You get what I'm saying? So I built in autonomy, and I built in agency, I built in community, I built in all those 5 features I just told you. I build into my class, and by the end of 15 weeks every semester, I achieve my goal of building a community of scholars. So if I can do it, also, I'm doing a research on this. So we will have valid data on what we're talking about, because I've been collecting research on the effectiveness of African-centered education at PWIs, at Hispanic serving institutions, and at Asian Pacific Island serving institutions as well, which Sac State is. So I'm currently collecting data on the effectiveness of that multicultural approach of education, which is going to be so profound due to it being 2 case studies, one in Sac State and one at Arkansas State, and the time, right?
How effective do you think it will be, especially from, people from rougher communities, that are coming into this, like you said, obviously getting into a whole different format of learning versus what they're accustomed to in obviously poor served communities. So
Right.
how do you think that would actually, what effect do you think it will do specifically, because the system is always going to go against you, right? So there's always going to be that chip on your shoulders where you have to work hard. So now you walk into this, how effective do you think it's going to turn around their approach on life in general?
So I see effect in week 8. In week 8, I do this thing called a video essay. And this is where my scholars go out to their community, and they essentially teach a document analysis to a member in their community. And that is kind of my, I guess for lack of a better word, buds. If you're familiar with Navy SEAL training, they have buds when they have this kind of hell week of training. So my midterm is buds. My midterm is an opportunity for folks to actually go into their community, coach up somebody in their community, and demonstrate their skills that they've been learning in the classroom, right? And take that knowledge out into the community and make the community better for it. They give me a video essay. So they don't give me a written paper. They sit in front of a camera and they tell me their experience. And they give me, I ask them for, to cite, to tell me different concepts like epistemology, what's the difference between Afrocentricity, what's the difference between Eurocentricity. So essentially, they are giving me a verbal essay. And it is one of my greatest creations, because the pride, the energy, the agency after that week 8, when they come back in from doing the midterm, oh, shit, you can't tell them nothing. What? They walk with heads up, chests out. What? They joking and shit. Like, they get it. They're not scared to be great no more, right? They've answered the challenge that I've put forth to them to be great. And folks have a hard time accepting that they can be great.
Any success stories out there that you could think of that stand out?
Shoot, there's so many. Okay, one. I had a young lady who took my class a couple of years back, and she was just like, "Oh my God!" Like, he cusses in class and all this stuff. I cuss like a motherfucker in class. It's really important to be comfortable in your own skin, to speak the language that you feel comfortable with. So I can go from talking about epistemology and the sanctity of religion to motherfucker, what's happening? I pride myself in being able to speak to everybody, right? That's super important. But Michelle was a church mouse, and was a she was a I forget, she was doing a fellowship, which this fellowship we have on campus, I forget the name of the particular McNair, a McNair scholar. So she was a McNair scholar. This McNair Scholars program at Sacramento State is a program that basically helps young scholars prepared to go to graduate school. And Michelle was dealing with the advisor of the McNair program, and the lady was, for lack of a better word, just giving her a hard time. Just not giving her good feedback on her papers, not being a good mentor, for lack of a better word. Michelle made me aware of it, and I was like, all right, well, I'll coach you up. I'll show you what you need to do. So one of the things that I do twice a year is I do a pre-graduate school workshop where I show undergrads how to prepare for graduate school, what materials you need, how to scout out your graduate school, letters of rec, CV, all those things. I give a 2-hour workshop. I invite several colleagues, have them, give their experiences, and it's dope. So Michelle did that workshop in lieu of doing some other things with my class. And then a couple of years later, Michelle was in this research methods writing class, and I came to a research method class because the professor had invited me to talk about my research. And then Michelle was like, Dr. George, can you help me with my research? And I'm like, yeah. And then she showed me her idea or what she was proposing to do for graduate school, and the advisor for the McNair program had told her it was a bad idea. And I seen it. I'm like, this is a great idea. And we tweaked it up a little bit, yada, yada, yada. Long story short, Michelle got into a very prestigious school. I forget the name of it.
Michelle, you heard it. We want you to post
Michelle,
it.
Dr.
Get that posted.
It was like UT Austin or something. It was a really big prestigious school, and she had emailed me back and was just like, yo, just thank you very much for the encouraging words. And I wrote her letter of recommendation for that program. UT Austin, that's what it was. I remember UT Austin, UT Austin, and dude, that's what it's about.
No,
That's worth more than $1 million, because you've helped somebody change the trajectory of their family, the trajectory of their mind, the trajectory of their community, the trajectory of their children. That is just so many levels of change that was implemented through one person's belief and working with another person. So those are my money days. Those are my big time paychecks, when my scholars make that transition from being curious about being great to stepping into the shoes of being great.
Now you said, you've done a lot of research, right? The death of your younger brother sparked that interest, right? And me and him always talk about it all the time. It may seem like I'm getting to this question a little bit longer, but we talk about all this time is knowing the truth, like what's really what's really good, right? But oftentimes what I've realized is, even if I'm reading a book, right, that's still I'm still basing what I'm acquiring from the person who wrote that, right? So how do you decipher? How do you say, like, because I'm Christian. I have Christian beliefs. He's Catholic. You know what I'm saying? So, but even then, I'm not a fool. You know what I'm saying? I know that there's more to it than what's in the King James Bible. You get what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
So I'll go out there and I'll seek, and I'm reading these things, but it's just I get this little voice in my head that's just saying like, yo, this other guy still wrote that. Me and him can look at one picture and get two different meanings out of that same picture,
as well as reading something and get
Right.
multiple meanings, right? Because interpretation is up to the person.
So how, because because I want you to answer this question following that, but you said the difference between religion and spirituality. But in your research, like, how are you able to trust that what you're reading and the conclusions you're coming to is the truth?
Multiple sources and cross-referencing. I'll say this again for television. Multiple sources, cross-reference. When I say multiple sources, meaning primary sources. What's a primary source?
First
Bible.
No. A primary source is an eyewitness account, right?
Oh,
I was there.
Okay.
I saw it, right? Then we got secondary sources, right? Secondary source. I saw a photo. I heard somebody talk about it.
Okay,
Right.
but okay, so this is the part that it gets confusing, and me and him.
Let me finish.
All right.
Primary sources. So, for example, a lesson I teach my class when we talk about primary sources, you brought up earlier that the depiction of the ancient Egyptians on television always looked white, right? Okay. So the Greek historian by the name of Herodotus that is said and named to be the father of Western history. He ain't the father of history because we're way older than Herodotus. You understand? And that's the audacity of Eurocentricity, right? They'll call somebody the father of something when there's been thousands of people before him. That's the audacity of Eurocentricity. But going back to Herodotus, Herodotus himself went to Egypt and saw these black Egyptians with the commingling of Persians and Greeks and still said they looked black. Okay? And he wasn't the only one. So we have ancient sources, eyewitness accounts. So primary sources. Then you got to cross-reference, right? Cross-reference. When the opportunity arises, if you can get to the location, that's always good too. But the books and the information help build up an understanding to what you're going to be looking for when you go to the location. Because I could drop your ass off in Egypt right now, but you wouldn't know what to look for because you haven't studied. You see? They go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. The frustration of looking at, quote unquote, the Bible is that it's an amalgamation of texts written over a 1,000-year period. To be a scholar is to let the chips fall where they may, right? My opinion, I'm not projecting my opinion on the data that I am organizing or collecting. Because the facts are the facts. Opinions are opinions. Now, we can sit here all day, and I can go back and forth with you about opinions, but I will not go back and forth with you about facts. I will simply cite the information, provide you with multiple sources. Hey, if you want to live in the world you live in, that's how you get in. But I tell you, the bank don't live like that. Administration don't live like that. We live off facts and data.
Okay, so with that being said, I think that it's easy to say, right, that anything that is man-made, right, to some capacity or to some degree can't be compromised. And not necessarily in a negative way, but in a sense of it's an interpretation of what they see, right? So you're completely right about the whole little Bible thing, right? But it goes back to not just the Bible, the Torah, Islam. I mean, it goes back to all these different religions, right? And this is kind of where kind of I'm setting my foundation based of what my interpretation of it is. Mm-hmm. But I just feel that the simple fact that it was man-made, right? Somebody saw it, somebody was in the situation, and somebody essentially heard of this story, right? Which, yes, to some degree they connect, the cross-reference, right? But at the same time, a lot of it has a lot to do with control, right? And then, just the aspect of making one person fall into some sort of community and based off of certain researches, books, or any type of like data that you could literally say, yes, this is I'm right. Because in my opinion, I feel like essentially there's not really a right or wrong answer because it's about how you interpret it, right?
So I feel like you're asking two questions about two different things, about religion and then about.
Well, it's just the logic behind what's what would say the logic behind the research. Like, is it really? Is that really the answer? That's basically what I'm saying, because it falls as back as religion.
Right. So this is where you got to have that conversation between religion and spirituality. I pertain to spirituality, so I would more engage in the principles of Ma'at, which are 42 negative confessions, which the Christians took 10 but forgot the other 32. And there is right and wrong, right? There's 42 negative confessions that are codes of the universe. That I believe if everybody followed, this world would be a better place. And those are initiated from the cosmos, interpreted by man. We always will be the interpreter from cosmos to matter. unless you know another way from us getting it from the Most High, to which we are an expression of the Creator having an endless amount of experiences. So in one aspect, you are referring to the dogma of religion, right? Dogma meaning that their texts never change, right? I'm speaking to the everlasting growth of African spirituality, which is something that is taught and can be taught, meaning that every day I walk a path referred to as the path of Ma'at. There are rules and regulations of walking this path. There are codes. I just told you, 42 negative confessions. They have very clear, cut and dry rules. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bother the altar of the gods. All 42. Thou shalt not covet another man's wife. Oh, they're there. They're there. Now, you may not know of them. Whose problem is that? Like my students always tell me, well, I don't know nothing about Africa. If you look out that window right there's a big-ass library over there. First section of the library starts with the A. You understand what I'm saying? So some of the shit, some of the problems and some of the answers, some of the challenges that we have are self-inflicted. Are self-inflicted because the consciousness ain't there. Before you dive into this understanding of knowledge itself, you have to raise your kundalini energy from your root chakra all the way up to your crown chakra. So that might be a challenge as well, right? Somebody was, I had a student who was telling me, man, Dr. George, I been, my brother, I know he know this shit, but I be trying to tell him yada, yada, yada. And he always just be going against the grain on this shit. I'm like, duh. One, you ain't even ready to teach nobody. You just been in my class for fucking 8 weeks. Calm down. Two, your brother realizes that this information is valuable, but he don't want to hear from you. You understand what I'm saying? Understand this. Everybody wants to know the truth and light, but everybody don't want to work for the truth. The truth is a process. It's an ongoing seeking process. It's hard to be conscious. It's work to be knowledge of self. It's easy to shut down and not pay attention to the world. It's easy to not ask questions of why. It's easy to drive by that freeway that I'm pretty sure y'all drive by and see all those souls out there sitting out there. Meanwhile, this is the richest country on earth. And yet you got children that are unfed, unclothed. So you tell me what's happening. Yeah? For all those churches that they got built and all those synagogues and all those mosques in this country, what do you get for it? What have you gotten for it? You say the church, well, they throw bombs in churches with little girls in them, with little black girls in them. They shoot up mosques. I've seen white men go into churches in South Carolina and murder the whole congregation. And the police take him to get, what they take him to get Taco Bell after? Something like that. Burger King, right? Right? I've seen the images of black men and black women being killed on television. I ask my classes all the time, raise your hand if you ever seen a white person being shot or brutalized on television by on the news. Mexican, Chinese, Asian. I'll go down the list. You ever see a black man? Everybody hand go up. Right? That's lynching. That's AI lynch. So you talk about AI? That's AI I'm concerned about. That's the new AI. That flicker of an image that goes back into your subconscious mind. That's the damage you should be concerned about, not the AI. The subconscious mind is what you should be concerned about, and the symbols and the images that they plot and plan that you subconsciously bury in the back of your head, and they become nodes. They become these memes. Excuse me, I said nodes. Memes. I got data in my. They become these memes, right?
You going cold?
No, they become memes that affect your conscious mind, right? So, the first thing I would say for anybody who's seeking to raise their consciousness is knowledge itself. First thing first, who are you? Where your mama come from? Go down that bunny hole. When you go down that hole, other doors will open, right? Other doors will open. And as you go down that hole, as the light and your ancestors understand that you are trying to make contact and make stride in your consciousness, they will assist you. They will assist you. Let me ask you this, and both of you can answer this question. You ever want something and the timing's off? Like you try to do something and you do everything in your power to make this shit happen, but it just don't happen.
All the time.
Okay. Okay.
On a daily.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Or you can have this time where, damn, if I didn't make this phone call, I wouldn't have got this ticket. If I wouldn't have showed up at this time, I wouldn't have got the. Everything happened so succinctly and so flawlessly, and it just happened. But one little thing got to play, and that shit ain't happening.
Yeah, that. I think that's very.
So that's the
very,
ancestors. You understand that? That's ancestral
I was just
energy
thinking
right
it was a secret. You know,
It's you doing what I refer to as your cosmic assignment. Everybody has a cosmic assignment on this planet. Everybody don't know what the cosmic assignment is.
I need that money cosmic assignment. You know what I mean? Get that one triggered.
But here's the thing, young brother. When you understand your cosmic assignment, everything that you need comes with it. Everything that you need comes with it. Right.
And that's attained by initial finding out knowledge of self.
Boom.
Okay.
Right? And it goes from like.
But you got to do the whole little, that little, what is it, ancestry me? Like, do I really got to put my DNA out there?
No, that's process.
So how do you get this whole
When I got to
information?
that part, I was, man, when I did my ancestral DNA, I was working in West Oakland with Dr. Wade Nobles, world-renowned scholar, Dr. Lawford Goddard. So I was being trained by the best of the best, and Dr. Siri McDougal, and going to San Francisco State at the same time doing my master's. So I was already in the shit, and I was teaching and working at Prescott Elementary in West Oakland and King School and Martin Luther King School in West Oakland, all by Acorn Projects. I don't know if you're familiar with the Acorn Projects in Oakland, but that was my hood right there. Those families, those communities is where I really broke my bones in education and teaching. So what we would do is we would have a thing called a Sharujata, which is another Kemetic word for rebirth. And when we would bring the families who completed the program, we would do their ancestral DNA. So if you did our program and you went through the program, we'd bring the people, because Dr. Nobles was friends with the founders of AfricanAncestry.com. So they literally flew out to Oakland and did our DNA revealing, like mine's, I'm 97% Takar and Fong, and my people come from the Cameroon and Gabon. So those things.
That program still exists?
Unfortunately, I don't think it does. I think Dr. Nobles retired and moved on to different research, and I think he gave the program to his son, Michael Nobles, and I went to get my PhD, and I kind of lost track of I'm still in contact with Dr. Nobles. He'll every once in a blue do a Zoom lecture for my class, come in and introduce himself, but he's just been growing and profound doing his work as well. He's been doing a lot of work in Egypt, doing a lot of data collection as well. So the older we get, they tend to go back to the continent and go back to all these sources to collect data and write their final memoir. So this is good things.
That's what's up. Now you mentioned, I know when we spoke over the phone, you had mentioned that you're working on the book yourself.
I am. It's done. It's
done.
actually done. Yeah, I
right.
sent the final manuscript in yesterday.
Are you able to release the title? Or
Yeah, I can tell you the title.
Let's talk about
The book is called Pontificating the Sankofa Project, Notes on the Myths and Realities of Pan-African Studies. And it is my baby. 8 chapters. It is a project of love. It's a project that originally was specifically for my classes. But as I started to write the book and started to develop the project, started to have conversations with fellas like yourselves, I realized there was a need for just like a practical, in-depth book on Pan-African studies, Africana studies, which they all exist. But I felt like my book is a little bit different because I was developing this book from my course syllabi and kind of past projects that I already done. So it's kind of amalgamation of previous projects, new projects, and the courses that I'm teaching, and my awareness that there's a need for this kind of content in our community. That's kind of like, not overwhelming, but just like a nice book that folks can read, can have primary sources, can share with their family, can share with their kids. I've been doing a lot of K through 12 consulting for African American curriculum, so I'm also drawing from that. Thinking about what have educators and school districts asked from me to provide them, and kind of think about it from that perspective, and kind of just put all that in a book. The last chapter is a real gift and joy. I think for me, it's my 8 trials and tribulations that could have broke me, and I go through those 8 challenges and how I overcame them. So I'm excited.
Yeah, no. I think this is definitely exciting to hear. You gonna have an audible?
I don't know if they have it available. Like.
I ain't gonna lie,
welcome.
I like to listen to books.
No, I'll definitely tell them to consider that, because that's another route. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, it's exciting. I'm really excited for that book release to come out, that project.
And what is something that you would tell a lot of this new generation, specifically minority, African American, Mexicans, I mean all that, like what would you say as far as right now to pursue this education and that hunger for knowledge?
Oof. The only thing that can stop you is you. And I truly mean that. I know knowledge is power. And when I see that power get turned on in our youth, it's a special feeling, man. Believe in yourself. Work hard. Do the work. And I'll say this. If you want to go somewhere fast, go by yourself. If you want to go somewhere far, go with a community. And I'll let you unpack that how you see fit. But I'll tell you this. All my success has been community. Whether it be mentors, whether it be people sitting down telling me to do this, to do that. I am a byproduct of a loving community that I love back and that I give reciprocity to. So love yourself, love your community, and let that love and that light lead your path, and you'll be fine.
Hey, well, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to the conclusion of our show. At the end of every show, we're not going to change anything now. Always open up the microphone to our guests, to our hosts, to leave any parting words with the listeners and the viewers out there. We'll start with GQ Nestle today. Is there anything you would like to share?
Well, I think he made it very clear. Knowledge is power. And I think digging deep into who you really are is definitely something interesting. And I'm definitely going to look into that. So I would advise our listeners to do the same. Sometimes certain things will start to click better, and why not with knowing yourself a little bit more than what you think you do.
All right, Dr. Clarence.
Well said, GQ. Knowledge of self. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you. Appreciate this space for this topic, and sharing this with your viewers. I think is really rare that caliber scholars get a space to talk outside of our classes or with other academics, or which we could, like GQ was said, at times we can be isolated amongst ourselves. So I just want to thank you for giving me this space, and everybody take care of each other out there, please.
For sure. I would say something that you mentioned. To me, I would think it would be common sense, but I think it needs to be restated. If you want to go far, it's going to take a community. You know what I'm saying? And this is how we build that community, through communication and through interaction.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Sir.
So once again, we want to thank you. Thank you for this time. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you. We thank you for tuning in. We thank you for watching. We appreciate all your support. It doesn't go unnoticed. Please look for us. We got some big things coming in the future. But be safe, like you said. We love you. We thank you. We out. Peace.
Nice.
Thank you.